meeting to order, and if everybody would please stand. And please remain standing. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mike, would you please grace us with an invitation, please?
And most gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you, dear Lord, for this beautiful day you've given us, this beautiful evening for this meeting. We pray, Father, that you will bless everything that is done here this evening, that everything done here will be pleasing to you and in accordance with your will. We ask, Father, that you will bless all who attend and see everybody home safe and sound when the meeting is over. In Jesus' holy and precious name we pray. Amen. Amen.
And if you would remain standing, we have a moment of silence for some of our neighbors who passed away. Maria Suzanne Walker Genfeld, our former mayor, David Fowler, and my neighbor, Charles Teachy. Thank you so much. Please be seated. Good to see everybody. It would now make sure your phones are off or your vibrators are on. I'm sure you all have some lovely ringtones, but just share them with us later. We'll try to keep this. And also at this time, any board member who has a conflict of interest with anything that is on the agenda, please make it known now. If not, we're moving right along. All right, next on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as it is?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor? Thank you. And next up is public comment. So we have some people signed up, so please forgive me if I mispronounce your names or get your spelling wrong. You'll go up to the podium. When I call your name, just tell us who you are, where you live, and you get 3 minutes. Tell us what's on your mind. So we'll start with Dot Morris.
My name is Dot Morski, and I live in Star Hill. I have read many concerned comments about removing the police officer from White Oak School, and also about proposed townhomes on Taylor Notion Road. What I say is directed to our residents. It is actually easy to learn everything that is planned in our town. Cape Carteret would like to have every homeowner's email address so they can send them the informative town newsletter connection and other important emails. On the awesome Town of Cape Carteret.org website, you can read the agendas and also see exactly what will be discussed at the meetings. You can also learn how to see every meeting as it is broadcast and view video minutes that are posted afterward. Every meeting is open to everyone as well. The townhomes have not come up suddenly. 2 or 3 years ago, an applicant requested a zoning change for all of R30 to become multiple family housing. R30 constitutes the majority of the housing property in town. Due to heavy opposition, the request was withdrawn. A few months ago, the current townhome request was made by a different property owner for a different location. After extensive deliberation by the planning board and commissioners, it was approved. There are nearby condos on Taylor Notion Road. Details will be discussed over the next few months with our officials. The removal of the Cape Carteret police officer from the White Oak School was not lightly considered. Cape Carteret has been the only one who has provided the police officer for many years. Now our town needs to take care of our residents, and another plan is needed to provide the necessary service. Students from several towns attend the school here. It is logical that a central entity like the county arrange officers for all the schools. Instead of coming to Cape Carteret to change its position, we should be going to the county to get them to control what is truly their responsibility. The decision to reassign the police officer was discussed at the February 23rd budget meeting, open to all. There were just 2 of us there as residents. There is a current news release stating Cape Carteret's willingness to do the same as other nearby towns regarding the school officer. Letting the county know what we believe is necessary. Citizens expressing their opinion helps. The county commissioners know we truly care. Let's all contact the county commissioners.
Thank you, Doc. Next up is Drew Walker.
Good evening. My name is Drew Walker. I have 2 children at White Oak Elementary School. I live on Emerald Isle. I've been here about 6 years. So I would like to start off by saying every interaction I've had with Cape Carteret police officer has been a pleasant one, thankfully. They're obviously well trained and have a good culture in front of them. That's not to be taken lightly. What is concerning, though, is when we do remove a school resource officer in what is essentially a public spat with the county officials. There's news articles out, and I have contacted the county. I've also reached out to my congressman because I believe that it should be negotiated in private and that the current methodology is not well suited to endear the school and the children to the safety that they should enjoy. They are required to go to school. You and the county, not or, and the county are required to provide them the safety that they deserve. There are no exceptions to that. There are no exceptions to a 5-year-old being protected by your decisions. They have no other option. My son will not be at a school without a school resource officer. And the public finger pointing that has gone on is unacceptable by any elected official at any level. I would not tolerate it from my congressman. I would not tolerate it from my senator. I wouldn't tolerate it here either if I lived in this community. But I don't. But somehow your votes still impact my children. And public leverage, which let's call it what it is how you intend to get this done. It's not acceptable. And it's not acceptable in any town in the United States of America. I would expect that you would work with the county in a collaborative way to end this disaster and make it right. I don't care who the school resource officer is. I don't care where it comes from. But the way that this has happened, I do care about. You have no problem cashing the checks for the property taxes that a good school brings higher values from. But you seem to have a problem with providing the resources that get you those higher property values. Good schools bring better property values. You don't get to pick and choose. Thank you.
All right, thanks, sir. Next up is Catherine Statler.
Good evening. I'm Kate Statler, Vice Chair of the County Board of Education. Since 1999, the Columbine shooting, there have been 394 shootings with 360,000 children exposed to gun violence. I don't think any part of this has been a discussion of if a school resource officer was needed, and I know you guys have not argued that point. I was heavily involved in the discussion with the county and following your model and for funding, and really appreciated that was started and understand your intent to end that now. That's not what this discussion is about for me. This discussion is about transparency and honesty and putting truthful information out to the constituents. When the funding was pulled, of course, I became concerned. As a parent, community member, and school board member, I was surprised to hear how proud a board was to be the first municipality to remove this position. I asked if it was a funding issue, and thankfully it is not a funding issue. I asked if it was staffing, and they said yes, it's a staffing issue, and there was not a plan in place currently to fix that. I understand that is not Cape Carteret specific. This is across the United States that everyone is having the staffing shortage. Last week, I read and was told by members of this board that the county commissioners were very aware of the decision being made and agreed with the decision. So I contacted all commissioners because I don't ever want to put words in anyone's mouth. I spoke to Chair Jimmy Farrington and your representative David Quinn, Commissioners Wheatley, Mansfield, Kavanaugh, Shin, and Chadwick. All 7 county commissioners said they absolutely do not agree with the decision being made here. The county had no plans to put a sheriff at White Oak Elementary School in the fall. They would, of course, continue their portion of funding, and Commissioner Quinn and Mansfield echoed that they have offered additional funding if that was needed here. All 7 commissioners were very clear. Their expectation is this remains a municipality responsibility due to jurisdiction. The commissioners had expressed they felt they had a great working relationship with the board in the past with funding sidewalk projects and fronting hurricane mitigation, but that's not their feeling with the sitting board. I next called Sheriff Asabuk. I didn't want to speak for him either. He confirmed he's not in agreement and has no intentions on having a sheriff at White Oak Elementary School. I understand if the county commissioners say that this is a sheriff position, then Asabuk has absolutely said he will work to staff that, but that is very different in him stating that he agrees with the decision being made here. Transparency and honesty is what's missing from this decision. Stating you're simply handing over a position and ensuring parents, teachers, that there will be a sheriff at White Oak Elementary School is not truthful information being put to the public. You were absolutely elected to have a voice, and I will respect whatever decision you're made. I just hope it's with honesty backing it. You were not elected to let the loudest member of your board clearly and proudly make decisions. These are kids' lives, they're teachers' lives, and these are vital, positive relationships that we need to establish with law enforcement as early as possible. These lives aren't pawns in a political game, and I would love to see them not used as such. Thank you.
Next is Ray Wildbusser. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, sir.
No, that was perfect. Thank you. Good evening. I was also kind of shocked to read the March 31st article in the Carteret News Times about Cape Carteret not supplying a police officer to serve as a school resource officer for White Oak Elementary beginning in August. It's been less than 2 years since a group of concerned parents and grandparents petitioned the Carteret County School Board members, county commissioners, town council to ensure that every Carteret County school has a dedicated SRO after the horrific shooting in Uvalde, Texas. I spoke at the June 2022 Board of Ed meeting and County Commissioners meeting. Sheriff Buck requested and received funding to bring SROs to make this and other security improvements happen, keep our kids and grandparents safe. School resource officers act as a crime deterrent, but they also become a role model for students. And this one-on-one relationship between the students and the officers allows problems to be solved before they escalate beyond control. They also work in conjunction with school officials to maintain a safe and orderly environment at the school, and the elementary school resource officers utilize the DARE program within the school. So they're very important. Our country is experiencing a time of increased violence and unrest, so now's not the time to remove SROs from our schools. When reading the agenda packet item number 16 for tonight's meeting, I was alarmed that there was a consensus from the board to pull the SRO out of the White Oak Elementary School and put him on the streets in Cape Carteret, and that the Cape Carteret police chief was okay with that decision because he needed officers on the street. What's changed in the last year that requires another officer to be on the streets of Cape Carteret and not in the school? We need to ensure our school kids are safe while they're in school, and having a dedicated SRO is essential to that. During that February 23rd budget planning workshop, our town manager presented 3 viable options to provide an SRO at White Oak and to have another officer available in the community. One was to have the sheriff provide a deputy to be the SRO. Another was to hire another Carteret police officer. And another was to ask Emerald Isle to see if they could provide an officer to be an SRO.
Now, these three options would cost the same, about $57,000 from what I read, and produce the same end goal, but I've been told money isn't an issue, and I'm happy to hear that. Each option's has pros and cons. The Sheriff's Department currently has 7 SROs and a backup, which would provide flexibility and experience. The Emerald Isle Police Department appears to only have 9 members, including the chief and assistant, so their ability might be limited to provide an SRO. And then having Cape Carteret hire somebody would keep the control of that SRO at the school that's in Cape Carteret within local control.
Okay, sir, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up is Paxton Holtz.
Thank you, Mayor and Board. I'm Paxton Holtz. I live in Cape Carteret, 547 Neptune Drive. I bring to your attention an item on the consent agenda, a resolution authorizing encroachment agreement for natural gas line installation, Club Point Drive and Rock Court. Now, I recently became aware that in putting natural gas service, a new line, down Channelview Court, that Piedmont Natural Gas inadvertently put their main line on private property. We need to reconcile the fact that there is no recorded subdivision between Highway 24 and Section 1 Country Club Point. And my father loved to leave a tree where he could. And he paved in and out lanes around a beautiful oak tree on Country Club Point. Unfortunately, Piedmont thought that where the pavement is was a dedicated easement. They put their line on private property. They have agreed to move it, but we need to work together, the property owners, the town, and Tidewater Engineering, to locate where a 60-foot right-of-way should be. I hope we can spare that tree, but please pay attention to this and let's get the location of the road straight before we put anything else in. Thank you.
All right, and last up is Karen Housecamp. Karen?
I am Carrie Housecamp, but I did not sign up to speak. I'm sorry, I thought you were going to speak. Oh, I forgot.
Okay, well, never mind then.
I mean, I can. I have nothing prepared, I'm just saying. Sorry. Carrie, would you like?
Oh, I'm okay. I'm a big girl. Oh, it's okay. It's fine. My name is Carrie Housecamp. These are other members of the PAC committee at White Oak. Parent as communication between the teachers and the parents. We are all parents of students at White Oak. I have 4 there. When we heard of the SRO position being eliminated, we were very defeated. To me, it's a non-negotiable. As a parent, with my whole entire life at that school, we as a community sadly cannot hide our eyes in the sand and think that we are a different small town than the violence that breaks out all over this country. And I think that personally, my family has been so affected by the positivity of the SRO officer on, with or without violence. He is an amazing role and an asset to the administration who is part of a giant school. He is a vital role, and any person in there would be a vital role. And I just think that of mothers are very discouraged that this is not a decision about children's safety and has become a political issue. I am not informed on all that. I will not speak to that. I will just speak to the fact that little children should never be a part of this. Let the adults figure this out, but the children should not be at risk. That is my opinion. And I also believe that if this continues and we have to put it in the hands of mama bears out there, I will say we will figure it out on our own, because my children will not go to a place where they will be unsafe. And I will protect them. And I don't know, I'm sure I have backing on that. We will live in a wonderful community, and I would hate to have that taken away by something that could have been prevented.
Just 2 more seconds, though. I just do want to reiterate what Dr. Howard, the principal over at White Oak, had also relayed to us in regard to that. And basically, we want somebody there's continuity. I mean, whether that's provided by Cape Carteret or whether that's provided by the sheriff, we want continuity, meaning one person dedicated full-time there, again, to foster the relationships with the kids as well as obviously to provide security. So we just don't want to be left without one. So whether it can be worked out with another entity or with other police departments and the other municipalities, but we wanted to have it ironed out before we were left without one, because obviously you don't want that to happen. But we just want to be clear for all of us that there's just one person that's there and it's not switched on and off. Thank you.
All right. Next up is a presentation from the Croatan High School Scoreboard Fundraising.
Good evening. My name is David Bull. I'm the athletic director at Croatan High School. Like he said, I want to put a video scoreboard up at Croatan High School. I met with Mr. Rush in March to inquire about ideas of how to contact area businesses. So here I am. The board would produce revenue for the athletic department. Whiteville High School put one up last year and raised $115,000. Installation for the board is around $48,000. The board itself is $178,000. The video company has a third-party fundraiser that would take care of that. So what I'm looking for is help or contacts of people who in our community that can help me raise that money. Anyone with any ideas of who I can contact, that's why I'm here. I'm going to contact Emerald Isle, Cedar Point as well. But hopefully through this great community, we can make this happen. Thank you. Anyone have any questions for me about the board? Thank you very much.
All right, next up is our planning board report. Mrs. Holtz.
Thank you, Mayor. Carteret Planning Board meeting scheduled for Tuesday, March 19th, 2024. Agenda attached. Was not held due to a lack of quorum. Only Truax and Holtz were in attendance due to sickness and other reasons. There were no members of the public present except for representatives of the Taylor Notion townhomes, which were on the agenda scheduled for a preliminary site plan review. Another meeting of the planning board was called for 5 p.m. Monday, March 25th, with a limited agenda. Copy attached. All members were in attendance. There were no public comments. The preliminary site plan for the 12 Taylor Notion townhomes was considered and unanimously approved to be submitted to the Board of Commissioners for their review. Discussion on the purpose of buffer strips revealed that town ordinance requires screening on all property lines. Planning Board did not want to impede views of the lake from the townhomes. Overflow parking for guests was discussed. Current rules do not allow any parking between townhome buildings. This may need to be considered for the benefit of the project and its residents. The question of stormwater was raised, and the answer was that all stormwater will be retained on the property. Town planning staff presented a study of 13 lots that do not meet the 70-foot minimum lot width at minimum setback lines. 6 of these lots have already been built upon in the past. 2 lots are in the same ownership as adjacent developed lots, and 5 lots are vacant. And I quote from staff submission. Given the minimal number of vacant lots to which this requirement applies, and with a view to simplifying the town of Cape Carteret Unified Development Ordinance, it is proposed to remove the 70-foot minimum lot width at the minimum setback line from all zoning districts. Motion to recommend change to the Board of Commissioners passed unanimously. A new time for the regular planning board meetings was suggested for 5:30 p.m. instead of 6 o'clock p.m. on the third Tuesday of each month, if the Board of Commissioners agrees. Staff announced, volunteers are needed for the Pamlico Sound Regional Hurricane Mitigation Plan. Anyone wishing to volunteer can get in touch with the town planner. Other subjects discussed were an observation of the failing and deteriorating North Carolina Department of Transportation fencing adjacent to NC Highway 58. A request to consider rezoning the west side of BoC Drive to allow all of the Bayshore Park subdivision to have the same zoning district. Clarification was requested from the police department to say whether it is legal to pull into the turning lane when attempting to make a left turn from any of the residential streets until traffic allowed one to merge into traffic. Any questions?
Thank you. Next up is the consent agenda. Is there a motion?
C on the consent agenda.
Yes.
This, you're asking for approval to go into an agreement. The map is a hand-drawn one. We still have to do the coordination with all the property owners and everything.
In this, excuse me, in this particular case, a new gas line would be installed completely in the public street right of way on the 2 streets indicated here. So they're just indicating the streets that are included in here. There's really no other submission that's required from them at this point. So I did want to, since we're talking about this issue, I did want to mention that the issue that was raised by Ms. Holtz during public comment is further up on Channelview Court, and I'm working on a plan to address that concern for you. It's peripheral to this issue.
I'll make a motion to adopt the consent agenda.
Second. I'll second. Any discussion? All in favor? Next is ordinance amending the Unified Development Ordinance to eliminate minimum lot requirements. And we also have a public hearing on that as well. Scheduled, you want to do a little brief?
Yeah, just very briefly, this is actually the issue that Vice Chair Holtz referenced in her planning board report a few minutes ago. On the screen in front of you is a map of the 13 lots that currently do not meet the 70-foot minimum lot width requirement. That requirement is enforced at the front setback line. So, i.e., if the front setback is 35 feet or 40 feet, the lot has to be 70 foot wide at that location. There are 13 lots that don't meet that requirement. Practically speaking, the requirement does not have any value to the town moving forward. It's an impediment to development on these 13 lots. As the board discussed at your last meeting in March, you took action to clarify the development of lots that don't meet the minimum lot size requirements, but that also meet all other applicable requirements. That ordinance primarily addressed the R10 zoning area in the Bayshore Park area. That 70-foot lot width requirement was not in place there. It is in place in the other residential zoning districts in the town,
And as Vice Chair Holtz mentioned, our recommendation to the planning board's recommendation to you is to simply amend the Unified Development Ordinance and eliminate that requirement. Really does not change anything significant. Any new construction that might occur on these lots is going to have to meet the applicable front setbacks, side yard setbacks, rear setbacks, whatever septic requirements, stormwater requirements, et cetera. So it's really kind of a redundant requirement that does not provide any practical value. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Frank? If not, then I'll entertain a motion to go into the public hearing.
Make that motion.
All right, second, all in favor? All righty, so we're now at a regular session into the public hearing regarding this matter. Did anybody sign up to speak? Okay, with that, I'll entertain a motion to go out of public hearing. Back to regular. Okay, second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor? All right. Is there a motion for the consideration of the ordinance?
Motion to amend the UDO to.
Any second? Any discussion? All right, all in favor? Thank you. The pre-positioned hurricane debris contracts.
Thank you, Mayor Baker. Commissioners, this is the one item every year that I'm really glad that we have in place, but that I hope and pray we never have to activate, because these are pre-positioned hurricane debris removal and hurricane debris monitoring contracts. As I'm sure you are aware, there are pretty significant FEMA and state of North Carolina requirements for removing debris and measuring the volumes and making sure that the payments to the contractors are accurate and fair. To that end, the state, to their credit, has established a statewide contract for hurricane debris removal and hurricane debris monitoring. The recommendation for your consideration tonight is simply for the town of Cape Carteret to activate those state contracts with two firms. For debris removal, it's company Southern Disaster Recovery LLC from Greenville, South Carolina. For hurricane debris monitoring, it's Debris Tech LLC based in Picayune, Mississippi. They were the successful bidders through the state's competitive bidding process that they undertook a few years ago. That statewide contract is still in effect. It does specify certain unit costs, certain hourly rates for the different debris functions that are included in the contracts. The contracts, if awarded, would only be activated if the town is affected by a hurricane during the 2024 season, and we are a federal disaster declaration area. So in other words, if we don't have any storms, we won't activate the contracts at all. If we do have a storm and there's a federal disaster declaration, we would absolutely activate the contracts. There's a requirement for the contractors to get started within 24 hours of notice to proceed. We would fully expect that all debris removal costs and debris monitoring costs would be reimbursed by the Federal Emergency Management Agency and also the state of North Carolina's Emergency Management Division. Where it gets a little bit tricky is if we do have hurricane impacts, and it's not enough to trigger a federal disaster declaration, but maybe the volume of debris is more than we can handle with our Public Works Department. That's where the judgment comes into play. Certainly, if we're in that situation, we're going to evaluate how much debris is out there, what our total costs will be, what are the capabilities of our Public Works Department, make a judgment at that time whether to activate the contract, with the possibility that we might not be reimbursed by FEMA and North Carolina Emergency Management. Thankfully, that scenario has been very infrequent in my career. Generally, it's more cut and dry. The good news is almost every year of my career, maybe save one, we didn't have to activate these contracts. So I hope and pray that's our experience in Cape Carteret this year for all of our sakes. There are significant benefits to having a pre-positioning contract in place. As you know, the immediate aftermath of a hurricane is a very chaotic, very difficult time, a lot going on. This enables us to basically have all of the contractual details resolved up front. And it's really a matter of making a phone call and telling them to get here with their equipment and with their staffing. And these are well experienced, well qualified companies doing this kind of work. It also makes it easier for staff to focus on other responsibilities. In the immediate aftermath of a hurricane, Public Works may be removing down trees in some of the roads. They may be cleaning up at the parks. They may be dealing with some damaged piers. We may be dealing with lots of other issues. So it frees up our staff so that we can focus on those other immediate response activities. There's a couple of nuances to the way the program works, and just want to remind you of those. For whatever reason, we are not allowed to collect debris from NCDOT maintained roads, from Highway 24, 58, and Taylor and Ocean Road, without having an agreement in place with NCDOT. We can certainly pick it up. We just may not be reimbursed for it if we don't have that agreement in place. So we'll make sure that we have that agreement in place so that we can come in and collect the debris from our residents on those roadways at the same time as everyone else. Generally, what happens in some of the more rural areas, DOT has responsibility for state maintained roads. They may not be as timely or as quick as we might like compared to what our contractors doing in our residential neighborhoods. So my approach has always been to just make an agreement with DOT, have our contractors pick that stuff up, and then get reimbursed for the cost. So pretty straightforward. The other interesting nuance in all of this is that FEMA and the North Carolina Division of Emergency Management won't reimburse for collection costs on private streets. And we've got just a handful of private streets in our community. Cape Point, probably the most significant one, a few others scattered throughout town. They will not reimburse for the costs associated with picking up in those streets. So it ultimately becomes a judgment call. It depends on how much debris we have and what the cost is likely to be. I feel very strongly that all of our property owners are entitled to the same collection services, whether they're on a private street or a public street. And so my approach would be to establish a system where either A, we would send our public works department into those private streets and just basically eat that cost ourselves, not be reimbursed for that, minimize our out-of-pocket expense. We may also take the approach that the property owners within those private subdivisions would be responsible for bringing it to a public right-of-way, in which case our contractor can pick it up. There's a third scenario where maybe we'd have Public Works pick it up within the neighborhood and bring it out to Highway 24, for example, in the Cape Point example. So those are just details that I just want you to be aware of. When push comes to shove, we'll work through those issues and we'll figure that out if the need arises. But it gets into some nuances with what's eligible for reimbursement and what's not. Both of the resolutions included in here are completely consistent with the state contract that's been awarded to these companies. These are the same rates, same terms as was approved by the Board of Commissioners prior to the 2023 hurricane season. So thankfully we didn't need it then, and I hope we don't need it this year either. So happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions for Frank?
So the recommendation is there's two different contracts. For the debris removal, it's Southern Disaster Recovery. For the debris monitoring, it's Debris Tech.
And we'll need to approve these separately, correct?
There's a separate resolution for each contract.
Okay. Need a motion.
I'll make a motion to authorize the hurricane debris collection contract with Southern Disaster Recovery.
Okay, second. All in favor? And we need a motion for the I'll second that one as well. All in favor? Next is the schematic design services potential new town hall police station.
Thank you, Mayor Baker. So you have two items for your consideration tonight related to a potential new town hall police station in the future. As you know, we had a productive discussion at your February 23rd budget planning workshop about future plans for new town hall, new police station, and also a new emergency operations center. At that meeting, we discussed different options. and I presented a few different conceptual plans for your review at that time. Up on the screen is the property in question. This is the town hall complex. There's a commercial building out here on W.B. McLean Drive that has 3 tenants. That's owned by the town of Cape Carteret. This is the building we're in right here. This is the park right behind town hall, and this is the parking area over where there's an ATM closer to McDonald's off of Manatee Street. Grand total, we have 1.6 acres. The discussion by the board at the February budget planning workshop meeting was to focus on potentially constructing a new building somewhere on the town-owned site, most likely up here in the area along Highway 24, to create a new facility for town government, for the police department, and also improve the aesthetic quality of the Highway 24 corridor, and create a new look, new image for the town of Cape Carteret. As part of those discussions, I'll just briefly go through these. I presented a couple of very rough site plans for you. One of the site plans we looked at was maybe doing a 1-story building out there to replace the 3 commercial units, and then ultimately making parking in the area where this building is now. That's an option that would be considered more going forward. Another option that we talked about was building potentially a 3-story building on a portion of the Highway 24 frontage, reserving the rest of it for maybe some future commercial development with a private partner at some point. Again, ultimately converting this building into a parking area and making use of the whole site. Those were 2 options that were reviewed by the board. My perception from the board at that meeting was that the 3-story option was probably the preferred option at this point. There are some code issues associated with that. Obviously, you're going up, you're going to get into elevators and stairwells and space required for that. You get into sprinkler requirements, fire alarm systems, those kinds of things, which I'm certainly not an expert on, but those will impact your costs going forward. Following the board's discussion, I reached out to several design professionals in our area in Eastern North Carolina. Ultimately, I am recommending that the board consider a contract with Dunn Dalton Architects. They're a firm based in Kinston, North Carolina. And essentially, the services that they would provide would be a more detailed analysis of exactly what the town's needs are for space for administrative staff, police department staff, how big the boardroom should be, what the EOC should be, what features we need, what sizes, what quantity, what elements we might want to include in there, how it would all flow, and then take their knowledge and their experience of those building codes, of those construction methodologies, those costs, prepare some schematic design options for the board to review probably a few months down the road. I met with Dunn Dalton. I met with another firm here, Coastal Architecture. Also talked with some smaller drafting companies and structural engineers. Ultimately, my recommendation is to go with Dunn Dalton. They've got a breadth of experience in Eastern North Carolina, many projects. The one you're probably most familiar with is the expansion of the Transportation Impact Building in Emerald Isle. The total contract that's included in the resolution is for up to $15,000. It's based on hourly rates. Depending on exactly how long it takes, it's anywhere from $11,000 to $15,000. I'd be working to keep that on the lower end of the scale. And ultimately, what they'll provide for you are the results of their analysis, talking with the town staff, considering the site, considering the code requirements, things that we've talked about in the past. And they're going to come up with a couple of different options, maybe 3 options for the board to review. I expect that 2 of them will be kind of similar to what I just showed you on the screen. A third option that I've had some conversations with them about involves maybe a 2-story building where we have police on the ground floor, town hall on the upper floor, and maybe the meeting room, EOC, is on the lower level. And there's pros and cons, there's trade-offs with all of these different options. How much land area you take up, what type of construction you pursue, what the code requirements are, et cetera, et cetera. But I expect ultimately we'll come back to you with probably 3 different floor plans and probably some conceptual drawings of what this building would look like, prepared by professionals, certainly much better than the preliminary work that I presented to you in February. If the board is comfortable moving forward with the contract, there's a resolution for your consideration. I did say it's not to exceed $15,000. I would expect that Dunn Dalton would get started here later in April. And probably we'd be coming back to you maybe at the July meeting with the final product, which I think will be some very high quality graphic representations of what we might accomplish. If the board likes one or more of those options that are presented, I think the next step would be to take that product and attempt to secure funding partners for the project. And then ultimately, if the board decides that we have the financing to move forward, we would then solicit another design firm or perhaps the same design firm to do the detailed design and take us through that whole process and solicit construction bids. So I think realistically, this new building, if it is pursued, probably will not be occupied for at least 2 years, and it may be 3, 4, 5 years, depending on how things play out. But obviously, you have to get started at some point in time. This is kind of the very first step in making that happen. To fund this contract, we talked before about replacing, or I should say, installing bulkheads at the water access parks. We have $15,000 in the current year budget for a bulkhead at the Easy Street Park. As you know, we subsequently applied for a state grant for bulkheads at all of the town's water access parks. We should get a decision on that, I think, sometime in May. So the recommendation for your consideration is a budget amendment that would essentially move the $15,000 that was allocated for the Easy Street bulkhead to fund this contract. If we get the grant, then that money is available and can be spent on this. If we don't get the grant, I don't see any scenario where we would be in a position to build the Easy Street bulkhead prior to June 30th of this fiscal year anyway, and would be looking to include funding for Easy Street in a future budget year, maybe next year's budget and so forth. So that's the recommendation for the funding for this. The budget amendments included. If the board is so inclined, I'd ask you to consider both of these items, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
What's your confidence that the statewide bulkhead?
Yeah, it's tough. I feel pretty good about it. There's a lot of grant funding out there right now, particularly for these kinds of resilience type projects, and I'm optimistic. We are kind of in a sweet spot in terms of the amount that we requested. It's kind of a manageable number, so I'm hoping that will work in our favor. But I don't know. On the other hand, a lot of times they're more interested in maybe projects that are perceived as more environmentally friendly than bulkheads. So I kind of have mixed feelings about it, but I feel reasonably good.
Would we be penalized if we waited until we got the confirmation of funding?
You would not be penalized in any way. I mean, there's certainly no great urgency in moving forward with this. At this time, you could wait till May, June if you'd like to see that. Well, I had a conversation earlier today with one of your colleagues, and the ask was if we didn't want to use the Easy Street bulkhead money for this, could we pull the money from general fund balance? And the answer to that is you absolutely could, or you could identify any other funding source that you think might be appropriate for this. In essence, it's kind of all the same at the end of the day. If we get the grant, the money's freed up, it's available for this work. If we don't get the grant, I'm probably going to come to you with next year's budget and include money for Easy Street, or maybe pull it out of fund balance at that time. So it's kind of 6 in one hand, half dozen the other.
Need 2 motions. That's correct. I'll make a motion to adopt the resolution authorizing schematic design contract. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? All right, then we need a resolution for the budget. A motion.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Thank you.
All right, next is the resolution authorizing the Big Rock Foundation grant application for the police department, AEDs, and lapel mic.
Just real quick, how quickly would we go? Is this something that we would do right away? Are you delaying any of this? Are you going to go right away with this?
in terms of the design, schematic
Yeah,
design work.
Go ahead and get them to go on that schematic.
I expect we'll get started with it later this month.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, good evening. How are you?
Jay.
So we have an opportunity to apply for a grant to the Big Rock. And what we want to use that grant money for are 7 automatic external defibrillators. This will put 1 defibrillator in every full-time police officer control vehicle. So we can better serve our people on the we are responding to medical calls quite regularly. And this will help us to better serve individuals and hopefully have a better outcome if we were to deploy these. The other part of the grant is requesting 9 wireless lapel mics. Basically, these mics can attach to any radio system, but they piggyback off the patrol vehicle. And the reason we're requesting these is that we have significant radio issues for coverage inside large structures like Lowe's or the Lowe's Food Store, Lowe's Home Improvement, or if we go into Mac Daddy's, we have hardly any radio coverage at certain points. This will allow the officer to piggyback off that vehicle for 1,000 feet, which means as long as you're within 1,000 feet of that vehicle, it's line of sight, and it's getting a stronger signal. Total cost of the project is $34,267.02. If awarded, we would ask that the Big Rock Foundation would provide 90% of that funding, $30,840. And the town would be responsible for 10% of the grant at $3,426.70. I just need your permission to apply for that grant. Everything is completed. I'm just waiting on you guys.
I'd like to make a motion
Yeah.
to adopt a resolution authorizing the Big Rock Foundation grant application for the police department for the AD and the labeling microphone, so the tail.
Okay. We have a second.
I'll second.
Any more discussion?
Yeah, I just want to thank the chief for taking on himself to apply for this grant. I think it's great.
Thank you.
I agree. I think it's gonna be good.
We've long needed those letters.
All right, all in favor? All right, thank you, sir. Appreciate it, Chief.
Stay right there.
Hang on.
I'll run it for you unless you.
Because next up on the agenda is the quarterly report from the police department.
All right, so we're going to start doing quarterly reports for you guys. Try to get information to you in a timely manner versus the annual report. So annual at the end, we go quarterly. So we're going to talk about first quarter stats and accomplishments for the police department. So in the first quarter, we issued our new Glock duty pistols to all police officers. They were issued in March. The department is currently in the process of fitting all officers with new ballistic vests, and thanks the board for voting on that last time. That is greatly appreciated. Reserve Officer Jessica Lockyer was sworn in, again, as coordinating annual in-service training. We have annual in-service coordinators specifically to our department, so we can have in-person classes as well as having to do the online classes that the state requires. We have completed and submitted application package to Training and Standards Division for 2 part-time police officers and 1 volunteer reserve officer. And we have completed annual in-service training in the following topics so far: firearms qualification, legal and legislative updates, and responding to active assailants. All right, next slide, Frank. 2020 police activity in first quarter. Total calls for service. This is total calls. This is dispatch itself initiated is 1,116 calls for our officers, and they conducted 4,101 directed patrols. Directed patrols include business checks, residential checks, neighborhood patrols, park checks, targeted traffic enforcement operations, and other proactive police patrols. Traffic stops for the first quarter. We've conducted 617 traffic stops and investigated 25 traffic collisions. 144 arrests or citations were issued by our patrol officers. Mutual aid. So it's a pretty decent sized number for this quarter. We've responded 21 times to law enforcement mutual aid outside the city. Those are requests from either highway patrol, the sheriff's department to respond to the area. Of those 21, we did not respond to Emerald Isle. assist fire EMS. Those totals are inside the city property, and we responded to 32 fire and EMS assists. And when we respond, EMS calls, we're responding to calls or injuries that we can try to get there and treat before EMS does. And then certainly any cardiac arrest, chest pains, our officers responded. And when you look at our call response times, our average response time to any call is 4 minutes and 20 seconds. However, when you start looking at the EMS stuff and the priority stuff, some of our guys are getting there in well under 2 minutes, which is really, really good. So if they get to AEDs, that's going to add some service to our community that we haven't had in the past. So any questions or concerns that you have of the police department?
I have a question on those. What distance are we responding? How far are we responding out?
Towards Stella, I don't think we went all the way to Stella this time. I think that was the furthest. We've gone to Riverside a couple times down in Cedar Point. Mainly traffic collisions is what we were responding to this time on 58. And there were a couple of domestics and fights that were outside the city.
So I thought it was a big number this time.
Yeah, I think 21 is a pretty large number.
What do you think contributed to the increase?
Sorry, well, call volumes for the area, and I guess lack of staffing probably for the sheriff's office in that area. All right. Anything else? Thank you.
Thanks, Jay.
I did just want to briefly update the board. You know, as we've talked about before, we have 7 personnel in the police department. One is the chief, one is our sergeant, one's a school resource officer, and we have 4 patrol officers. We currently have 1 officer who's out on light duty and will be at least until May, has been out since December. We also have another full-time officer who's going to be leaving us next week. And fortunately, we have his replacement selected and had that individual cleared with the state of North Carolina. And that person will start later this month, but that's still a 30-day period of field training. And so those are the kinds of real-life issues that come up in any law enforcement agency that impact the staffing levels. So for a short period of time, we're kind of down 2 people. And when you're a small department of 7 employees, 2 out of 7 is a big number. 1 out of 7 is a big number. And so that's really kind of been the root of the whole issue with the school resource officer. I'll touch on that a little bit more in my comments, but I wanted to make sure the board was aware of that. I applaud Chief Silva for his efforts to improve the department over the last several months. And he is actively working to recruit additional part-time officers to work with us to fill in shifts and so forth. So we're doing the best that we can. 16.
Let's go for number 16, town manager reports.
Get back to the audience here. Excuse me. Many written comments in there. I'll just touch on a few of the key ones, and then happy to answer any questions or concerns that you have about anything with the town. There is a service for Mayor Fowler this coming Saturday at 2 o'clock at West Carteret High School in Morehead City, and the public's invited to attend that, and certainly express our condolences to his family and to his friends. Some good news, at least verbally, and normally I'm really hesitant to make these kind of comments, but they told me it was okay to make it. We have been awarded a grant for $776,000 to construct a new multi-use path along Highway 24 from Yopon down to Mark's Restaurant. So great news. That was a grant application you all considered last month. Really pleased with that. There's a local match of $194,000, and we'll have at least 2 years and probably 3 years, maybe even a little more, to provide that. And so we'll be working on that as part of the budget process. Really pleased that the town was selected for that. I don't know the full history of the town, but I suspect that might be one of the largest, if not the largest, grant the town's ever received. So we got verbal confirmation on that, and I was assured that if I shared that with you, that we were going to get the written confirmation any day now. So I will have a resolution on a future meeting agenda for you to accept that grant, and we'll lay out the details and the schedule and so forth. So really pleased about that. The recommended budget will come to you on May 13th. We've tentatively got budget workshop meetings scheduled for May the 20th and also May the 28th. We can certainly adjust those dates if you would like, if they're not convenient for you, or if you have a need for other meetings, we can schedule those as well. But I hope that the document that you receive in May will be completely consistent with the priorities that you expressed back in February, as well as just the other conversations we've had over the last several months. So I hope I can give you what you want. One of the speakers mentioned the townhomes on Taylor and Ocean Road. So the preliminary review was done by the planning board at their meeting in March. There will be another review by the planning board at their meeting next Tuesday. And then if that goes well, you may see that project on your agenda for May 13th. The planning board seemed very pleased with the project during their initial review, and it is consistent with all applicable town ordinances. We put up signs on 100 Taylor and Ocean Road for sale, so those just went up the other day. Hopefully that will be helpful in getting the word out. Had a few kind of kick the tire inquiries, but nothing terribly serious at this point. I'll certainly let you know how that goes. Another piece of good news, finally got one more, actually two more permits for the Cape Carteret Trail. So waiting on one more here from the DOT. I hope that's forthcoming soon. We had to kind of knock these out in order. So getting closer. I apologize for the delay in that. We are working to schedule the next quarterly street sweeping event. It should happen one day later this month. I'll let you know when we get that nailed down, but I'm really pleased with that so far, and hopefully that will be helpful. Last thing I just wanted to just briefly touch on, just the school resource officer issue, since obviously a lot of folks came to the meeting tonight. And I just want to say that we appreciate hearing those concerns, and we appreciate people participating in this process. And I think there are many valid concerns that people have expressed. But I also want people to know that this is a decision that was very thoughtfully considered by our mayor and our board of commissioners, and a lot of discussion went into it, and a lot of time has gone by. This issue first surfaced last year during our budget process. There was some interest in making this change prior to the 2024 season. We didn't do that because it was too late. It was important to have a school resource officer there as well. So at this board's direction, we left the officer assigned to White Oak Elementary School for this district. And beyond that, we just have a need in our community to have that officer out serving all business owners, all institutions, all visitors in our community. As I have put out in the town's newsletter, as we've communicated, I know to some of you directly, it's really not an issue of funding. It's certainly not a political game or playing using it as political pawns, so to speak. Absolutely not that. That's not the intent here in the town of Cape Carteret. Certainly can't speak to other organizations. In our case, it's really just as simple as saying we have 7 officers in this town. That's a small department. You just heard me say that we've got essentially 2 vacancies right now. That takes us down to 5. It takes more than 5 people to provide 24/7, 365 coverage to a town the size of Cape Carteret. And we want to do the best job that we can to keep people in this town safe. Whether they live here, whether it's a second home, whether their kids are in school here, whether their kids are driving down to Michelangelo's to get pizza, or going to Mac Daddy's, or getting gas. And ultimately, it's about staffing. In a small department, if you lose 1 out of 7 or 2 out of 7, that's a really, really big impact. And think about the organizations that you work for or work with. When you have a vacancy or someone's out, everyone else there has to pick up the slack. When you're in a larger organization, if 1 or 2 people are out, it's a lot easier to adjust. And that's really the reality of this. We're the smallest police department in Carteret County, other than Indian Beach. We're certainly the smallest with a school. So we certainly want to be good partners, But ultimately, I think our goal is to do the best job we can for our entire community, and that was the board's direction to me as we prepare our budget for next year going forward. So I just wanted to clarify that for everybody. This has really nothing to do with funding, has nothing to do with anything other than just the reality of being a small department. I think essentially what we're saying is, please provide that officer from a larger agency. And one of the speakers said that they don't care where that officer comes from. And I think that's probably true for us also, right? If it's the sheriff's department, that's great. If it's a larger department like Emerald Isle, great. If it's some other larger department that's got more flexibility, I think that's really what we're looking for. And at the end of the day, it's up to the leaders of the town to make the decisions that they believe are best for everyone in our community. And they're trying to balance the needs of everyone in our community. So I did just want to make those comments. I hope that they're helpful. Absolutely appreciate everybody being here and sharing thoughts with us along the way. So, and Mr. Mayor, commissioners, if there's any other questions you have about the town, whether they're in the written materials or anything else, I'll try my best to answer them.
Thank you, Frank. Any questions for Frank?
I understand the issue with it being a small town and all everything they said, but what is a community that doesn't put their children's safety first? I'm pretty confused on how that's not the top priority. I did email everybody. School put out this news, and I got 2 very vague responses. I understand it's not a political thing, but we're also, it kind of sounds like it still. And I understand there's 7 people, but how is children's safety not at the top? The only reason I sleep at night is because this guy right here. When this came out, I didn't sleep the whole night. I was so sick. He is protecting our kids. He's not there. I don't know that I can send my children to school. So I understand that you're trying to balance priorities, but how are children not the priority?
All right, well, I'm sorry, but we've already had our public comment, and thank you. And like Frank said, nobody is taking this lightly at all. And if these guys want to address it on their own, I can't speak for these guys, but this is an opportunity in the night where if they'd like to say anything, if they have any comments, this is where we're at now. And I'll start with you.
Great.
Cameron.
Yeah, so, this was not a decision that I reached lightly. I think someone had even made the comment that, my life is at that school. Yeah, mine is too. And we actually are prioritizing your children, my children, everybody's children by actually making the right decision and trying to get assistance on this issue. And keep in mind that it is now April, and we still have a lot of time between now and when this would go into effect. And we are trying to work with the other organizations. And so that's why I think someone even had made the comment, this should be done, working on this should sort of be done in private. And we have reached out to the different stakeholders in this and tried to get feedback on that. And so, and we're still doing that. So I think there's more to come, and that's kind of my position on this is we're trying to work this out. I think this hit social media and the news at a inopportune time. And I understand everybody's frustration. I'm frustrated. So I get it, but I think we're still working on it. We're still going at it. That's all I got.
I don't have any comment tonight.
I'm going to stay with Cameron. It is a very, very delicate issue. I've had 3 children go through White Oak, Croatan, West Carteret. Been here 34 years. But my problem is not only the resource officer, but what is the school board doing to plan for the 1,200 kids that we're going to have with all the development that's going on in Stella and Pelletier? Have you even started looking for a land for a school? No. Okay? So my whole thing is that y'all need to get with the county and start looking for the answers for the future.
you pay county taxes. If you live in the town of Cape Carteret, you pay for the school resource officer and all the other resource officers that the county provides. And if that doesn't make you a little uncomfortable, it should, because it's your money. David Quinn has been no help. Jimmy Barrington has been no help. Mark Mansfield has been no help. You want me to call them out? I will. Bottom line is here, we need to work together. What y'all have been being told isn't the truth. I was in the meeting with Mr. Martin and Frank. I think Will was there also. Well, we met with the county and we got no cooperation, zero. So if you want to look at the big picture, look at all those houses going up in Stella. I think there's over 400 that's already been up there. Look at all the houses here in Cape Carteret. See the point? Have a lot.
All right, we got a bigger problem. Croton was the
End-all, fix-all for the high school problem we have. How many times have we had it out there, Bubba? 3? Yeah. And this school over here, White Oak, it's 60 years old or better. 60. Something's got to give. I really would love to see the school board be very active, start looking for land. And I know Bubba and I have had that conversation more than once or twice. That's all I have to say. We're working hard to get you an SRO. Might not be the answer you want to hear, but it's the best we can do. We can't afford it. Okay? Our citizens are who put us in office. We have to protect our citizens. We have to protect the children. But the bottom line is, we don't own that piece of property. The county of Carteret owns White Oak School, not the town of Cape Carteret. So it is the county's responsibility. Thank you.
Charlie.
Steve. Thank you, Mayor. I got a prepared statement I want to read, but first of all, I want to make it clear to the people here that no Cape Carteret board member has used children's safety as a political pawn, and it's a baseless accusation. Also, addressing a staffing issue isn't politically motivated, even if that's the narrative that some county elected officials are pushing. I need to address our board's unanimous decision to reassign the Cape Carteret police officer from serving us as SRO at White Oak to patrol duties. This issue is not a funding issue, but a staffing issue. Having an additional officer answering calls for service is beneficial to the citizens in need and the safety of fellow officers. Last month, our District 1 County Commissioner, David Quinn, deemed our decision a political game and called it irresponsible and reckless. During his political rant, he also boasted about Carteret County's low tax rate and how proud he was the county adheres to conservative principles. Earlier in the same meeting, Sheriff Buck spoke to them an hour and a half about his staffing issues, losing deputies to other agencies with higher pay, and potentially having to close a segment of the jail down due to the lack of manpower. After hearing Sheriff Buck's plea to increase his deputy salary to retain current employees and attract new hires, Mr. Quinn voted against a salary increase for deputies. A conservative understands the foundation of our constitutional republic is protecting liberty through funding public safety. I guess Commissioner Quinn fails to recognize his own hypocrisy. Board of Education member Kate Statter also chimed in on her Facebook with her opinion on the issue, calling for parents to come address the board. WITN ran a story with her comments adding to the sensationalism. Ironically, Ms. Stadler just voted for a budget that cut 57 positions within the school system that were funded through a grant. After that vote, she should understand that tough decisions have to be made when you have limited resources to work with. The school is owned by the county. Surrounding counties provide SROs in municipalities. Other counties understand their responsibility. Why does Carteret not? Cape Carteret is not Newport, Morehead City, or Beaufort. They all have larger police departments and increased tax bases. Certain county commissioners and school board members are attempting to publicly shame us to force the town into submission so they can neglect their responsibility. Cape Carteret will continue to protect our citizens as we always have done. And remember, there's 5 municipalities in White Oak School District that only 2 police departments. Public safety is a basic function of government, and I look forward to upcoming budget discussions where we can find ways to strengthen our support for our police department and improve our citizens' quality of life. To be clear, the county has been aware of our desire to remove the SRO for over a year. This is not a spur-of-the-moment decision. The county has had ample time to plan for this. Instead of ridiculing a municipality that's trying to do its best with limited resources, the county should be focusing on supporting Sheriff Buck and planning to address the growth in the county school system. Thank you.
So I think you can tell we got a lot of, it's a tough subject. It really is. And I had a presentation I was going to give. The more I thought about it, I'm disappointed with the county, but I'm not surprised after dealing with them like I have. And I was told by one of them that quality is in the eye of the beholder. And so when I was told that, I'm like, well, obviously we're blind to this western end of the county and the true needs. And I was hoping we could have another conversation before they did their little public jaunt here. And just like I say, just very disappointed. And like you say, it has turned into the political quagmire that it is, and it shouldn't be. It's really distasteful and disgusting in some ways that we're at this point now. Here again, there's nothing new here. You guys are just learning about something we've been talking about for over a year.
18 months.
And with the previous board, actually. So, but it's not our first dealing with this type of situation being handed back at us the way it is. I hope maybe the county can maybe try to reach back out and do the right thing. What was it Tommy said, that it was a matter of jurisdiction? Well, last time I checked, town of Cape Carteret is in the county's jurisdiction. We're county, we pay county taxes, and you're telling me the 8 schools that they're taking care of are more equal than we are. That's what I get from the county. But I do hope that we can get through this posturing and we can get down. And here again, we got time, and we can try to resolve this, and the county can do the right thing and take the responsibility I think they need to. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor. Thank you. Your voices were heard. We appreciate it. Like I say, we're just like the rest of you. We hope it can be resolved.